I know a lot of you guys in the Nano community especially have been wondering who is behind Trustable, what it is, why we're here, and what we're really up to, basically. So we are Trustable. Obviously, I am George Coxon from the Nano Foundation. We have Colin. You're going to introduce yourself?
Yes, Colin LeMahieu, founder of Nano.
Ben?
My name is Ben Yablon. I've been around blockchain since about 2012.
Ben.
Closer to my
There we
mouth.
go.
Cheers. Nice to see you all. I'm most known for founding a company called Salt Blockchain, which was one of the first platforms to lend against crypto assets. I also do quite a bit of advisory work with OECD and other global regulatory bodies.
Fab. And then obviously we've got Duncan, who you've just heard from.
I just bored you, so you know who I
So
am.
the four of us are behind Trustable, which is a new interbank asset settlement network where it's a bit of a strange setup today. I'm going to be interviewing my own team on this and trying to pull out as much we know the questions that I think a lot of the community have been waiting to find out. And so I think let's just kick things off really with Duncan. What is Trustable?
So I guess I touched on some of the frustrations in the market a few minutes ago. And going back to the point of the consumer never really sees a lot at the back end when they're doing a transaction. So, you take a normal faster payment today, I send you £100 or whatever it is. No one sees what happens in the back end, but that touches 2 other messaging networks and probably a settlement account at the Bank of England. And as we went along the journey, actually, there was 2 trains of thought as to why Trustable came about. Sorry, I'm waffling a bit here again, but let's give you the train of thought. So as we were starting to build a lot of the on-ramps and off-ramps for Nano, we also came up with a lot of problems with local settlement, local collection, how we reflect that on our books. Do we do it with Swift, which is the traditional system for messaging between banks? And at the same time, we were also stressing about things like Tether, and because we were looking at that as a potential solution for trying to help with things, or USDC or any of those. But it also brought the problems around gas fee, and that also then was another nightmare for us to deal with. So it kind of came iteration after iteration, and we were like, what if there's a better way that we could actually run the back end on our own systems for managing our ledgers and reflecting accounts globally? And it kind of came full circle from that, having chatted to, I've been active in the kind of traditional financial markets for I call it 20 odd years now. And everyone comes up with the same problem. Settlement is their biggest nightmare. And that's both from a cost perspective and a time perspective. So running full circle again was like, actually, we could solve a lot of our back-end problem by using either Nano or a derivative of Nano to reflect another type of asset, be that a sterling, a euro, a gold, or whatever it may be. And that's really where Trustable comes in. It's going to be the back end that powers a lot of the front end. So actually the consumer might not see a lot of it. But I'll just give you an example. What could happen with it is that you want to on-ramp into Nano from, let's just say, Turkish lira. You've got your debit card in Turkey and you want to load Nano. So I've got to receive Turkish lira somewhere at a clearing bank. I don't think you can do that on Binance or Coinbase or anywhere locally. I don't think you can. I don't know. I've got to receive that Turkish lira somewhere, and then I've got to reflect it on my books somehow. So traditionally, in a common way that works is that Turkish lira has got to be sent from Turkey to whoever our clearer would be, which would be in the UK at the minute. So that's a cross-border payment. It's going to take at least a day to get to us. Then I've got to reflect it in my books and then convert that Turkish lira into dollars, most likely, and then trade dollars into Nano, and then reflect the Nano on your wallet. I can do that today, but there's a lot of inefficiency in it, and there's a lot of settlement risk in it, and there's a lot of old archaic systems that need to be interfaced with to deal with that. And me as the entity taking that payment and giving you Nano is taking a lot of risk to do that. What Trustable allows me to do is, in the back end, it makes our life a lot easier because you can transact Turkish lira on your card today. I get notification from Visa straight away that I'm going to receive some Turkish lira at some point in the next few days when they settle to me. I can immediately issue a digital Turkish lira on the back end of that on Trustable. and then I can immediately trade that into dollars on Trustable, and then I can immediately give you Nano on the Nano network. The consumer doesn't really see any of that and probably doesn't care about it too much. But what it does mean is that I can move a lot of assets in my back end between our systems and other counterparties that want to use Trustable without actually having the physical fiat with them at that point in time, because that is what delays everything at the minute, is that until that Turkish lira is in my clearing account in the UK, I can't really give you Nano.
Yep.
But if it was reflected in a digital format, because I know that I'm going to get it at some point in time, I can take the fiat risk on one side and give you the Nano. And then this also comes into other assets as well. So take as an example, gold as a really common one. Gold's a bit of a pain in the backside to move around because it's heavy. So it tends to actually just sit in warehouses around the world and people just trade the paper behind it.
Yeah.
Gold actually never really physically moves. But that settlement network is based on a pretty old system that can sometimes take 2 or 3 days to settle. Again, jurisdiction dependent. If I trade between, let's just say, the US and Turkey, it can take 4 or 5 days. Where actually, we could take a kilogram of gold, issue it on Trustable, you get a number of tokens behind it, and essentially that's freely tradable on an instant 24-hour settlement process.
Yeah.
And what also this enables us to do is to remove the weekend problem. Like me talking about my Aussie dollars, I can't settle Aussie dollars now until Monday. And if I trade it on Monday, it doesn't get there till Wednesday. But actually, we could technically issue a digital Aussie dollar on the back end of it. I hold the dollars in an account, we can trade it, and it's freely tradable 24/7, 365.
I love them. I mean, so Trustable actually has 3 different products that we're building, really. So the first is an FX asset settlement network. The second is a commodities exchange. And the third is a commercial wallet. I know that we're slightly restricted with how much detail we can go in, but we will get to kind of the wallet and go through these products in a little while. But I'm just going to actually just jump to Colin.
Yes.
I know there's been quite a lot of interest and in how Trustable as an FX settlement network utilizes Nano. What is the relationship on the technical side between Nano and Trustable as a network?
Yeah, absolutely. So this question has come up a lot with, how does the technology interweave with each other here? So really at a technical level, the entire Nano software stack is an accounting system. What it is doing is accounting for the self-named Nano token. So it's Nano, the free floating currency. However, the technology can really track whatever you want. It can track something that is backed in a deposit somewhere else. So at a technical level, what we're doing is making use of what's already in the Nano network. For the people that understand the low-level network part of it, there's a number in there which identifies the network that this message is associated with. So right now we just use it for the live network and beta and test networks, but there are lots of numbers there, and we can use those numbers to basically identify the exact item that's being traded. And then we can run the network there. So it's the same technology with a different parameter, just changing the number to change the asset that you're trading and interacting with, and that's how we do it.
And how do you, I know there's another little question that the community have been asking, but how do you split your time? Obviously, there's a slight competition between, Trustable on the code base inside. So
yeah,
your time is very precious. How are you spending your time?
So actually, that question's a lot easier to do it because, as I just said, they are using the exact same technology stack. So there's no difference in this. The accounting is the same. So all the time that we work on Trustable and all the time that we work on Nano, it's interchangeable. Both the technologies are the exact same code base. And this gets more interest and more draw into it from another part of the economy, and we'll get more development resources into it. So I see it as very positive.
Yeah, and so on the point, and obviously Duncan kind of laying the scene of FX being kind of the global backbone, really, of the economy, the global economy. How we see Trustable and Nano working together is Trustable being the settlement network, with Nano being the peer-to-peer digital currency for the people on the ground. Trustable, the FX network, and the commodities exchange are purely institutional only. And talking about institutions, Ben, obviously you are an advisor and a pretty big dog in the institutional world. You are an advisor to the OECD and various other kind of large foundation institutions. what do you think the appetite is globally for a technology such as this? And, how have you found the landscape where you've got, our competitors, in this realm are the Ripples and the various others, and we'll explain why we're different on a technical level moving forward in a second. But Ben, over to you on the regulatory side. How are you finding things?
So just that. I got involved in this very early on as a lawyer and representing startup companies trying to launch something in the digital asset space.
Yep.
Initially, Bitcoin and Ethereum, derivations of the Lightning Network, on and on until I founded Salt. Salt was forced to interact with, as any lender in the space, is stable coins.
Yep.
And as my understanding of stablecoins grew and my interactions with the global regulatory community developed, the overarching theme, the piece that no one had a good answer for, was what is a stablecoin? What does that actually mean? So when you say stablecoin, that's almost like saying bank. And bank has a very particular legal standing. You can't just say you're a bank. There are very particular requirements. So the development globally of what it means to be a stablecoin is something that I've watched very closely. I've participated in a lot of the working groups, papers with the Bank of International Settlements has weighed in first highly against stablecoins, then sort of in favor, and then interested in other derivations like a central bank digital currency, which we can get into. But the initial interest, the thing that I could never look away from, was what's a stablecoin? And so if you look at the name Trustable, we say trustable, but inherent in that is true stable. So what we're building, what we're actually deploying, are true stable assets, which means one for one. Like if you had to ask somebody, what does it mean for it to be a stablecoin? I think the answer would typically be, it's one for one backed, and you can prove it's one for one backed. But nothing else really is, right?
Nope.
So when we look at Tether, when I'm having conversations with the global regulatory community, and I've been close to the folks around Tether, what is it, 70% best case? They say
I won't comment on that.
Yeah, I
I
don't.
think it's about 30% backed, right?
Depends on when
on
and who you
traditional
ask and what
cash.
it is, right? So what really are these? And then when we look at Luna,
Yeah.
what a great example. So Duncan, what in the world is an algorithmically traded stable coin to you?
Excuse my French.
Is that a
It's a bit
thing?
of bullshit.
It's not a thing.
I like to call-
It's not a thing.
You can't have an algorithmic stablecoin
It
because it
literally does not
defeats
make
the point of
sense.
stable.
I called it the finance equivalent of a perpetual motion machine.
Yeah.
It's just like the imaginary machine that will not exist.
So we solved that.
Nice. So I know we have various different products that we're going to kind of just delineate a little bit further. So the first, obviously, is the FX network and asset settlement network. The second is a commodities exchange, where we really still are trying to fix real-world problems. As Duncan and as everyone said earlier, moving commodities and moving those, gold and all those other commodities has been cumbersome, heavy, and been relying on paper, basically, for the last, forevermore. And then the final thing, which we're, I think, probably most excited about, really, for the wider world, is non-institutional, a retail-focused and commercial wallet. Duncan, do you mind just running us through kind of a little bit around this wallet, potentially?
Yeah, I think we touched on it a little bit before. But, the idea being that we've got a full commercial wallet, both on phone and desktop, that takes best of breed security. And actually one thing to touch on there, I mean, it's a kind of elephant in the room at the minute, and I think some people don't know that it actually exists, but the whole quantum computing problem, which I know that we might differ a little bit on our view on it, but this is the problem with encryption that's coming up, where computing power now is getting so good that probably in the next 5 or 6 or 7 years, technically the best supercomputers in the world can crack even the standard encryption that's used on pretty much everything today. And it's a bit like the millennium bug problem in that I think a lot of people are dipping their head in the sand about it, and will it actually be a massive problem? Because there's only going to be a few people in the world that have this kit. But it is still something to think about. And actually, from our perspective, it's something we're thinking about on the wallet very early stage so that it's kind of potentially future-proof for that in the future.
Yeah.
But really, like from my perspective is, and I say this honestly, when I first tried to buy Nano, it was a pain in the backside. And
it was quite a few years ago,
this was quite a while back.
It's got better.
And the one thing that I do find, I guess, slightly frustrating is that I don't like keeping stuff on exchange. So once I've got it back to either my wallet on my phone or whatever, cold storage, how do I get it back into sterling if I need to, or whatever currency I need to? And that again is a pain in the backside task to do.
Yep.
So that was one of the main themes on the commercial wallet, was that all of that can be integrated into one. We're quite lucky. We have a payment service provider in our group, so we're using that as our on and off ramp for debit and credit cards. And then it's also slightly useful that we've got a bank in the group, so we can do quite large on and off ramp in traditional rails. So if you want to Swift us £1 million and buy some Nano, we can do that for you. And the other idea around the app is also on the KYC, AML side of things, so that we're kind of best of breed on that side, so that we don't try and get attacked from anybody on the kind of regulatory side of things. And
so really, I mean, this commercial wallet will have the opportunity to be a full turnkey solution that you can on and off ramp Nano with 100 plus fiat pairs with an app. And the aim that you will never have to touch a crypto third party ever again. And that's really it, is to keep everything together.
And potentially as well the other crypto assets. So you'll be able to on-ramp and off-ramp from BTC, Ethereum and other majors directly in the app as well.
We're battling over that currently.
Yeah. Well, we want more people to buy Nano.
So, I mean, I know that we touched on this a little bit earlier, but what is the impact of a feeless instant settlement when it comes to commerce? And I know that, Duncan, you went through a little bit of this, but in now, kind of when Trustable is kind of, it'll be explained a little bit further. How do you see Trustable kind of fitting into that world?
Well, it's game changing. So, I mean, look at it just from our FX settlement perspective. As I said, we settle about $9 billion a day, roughly. Our settlement fees for doing that are about 40K a day, roughly, just to put it into scale. And if I can get that down to almost zero, I'm a lot happier.
And to put that into Nano perspective, $46 billion and not a single fee in 6 years.
Exactly. So, and this then falls into so many different businesses as well, in that not just traditional commerce in us day to day, but like ultimately as well, there's the pushing of, and that's where Trustable can help too. Is the pipe dream is that you've got terminals sat in any institution, be it here, be it a shop in Nigeria or wherever, that can accept your Nano and could have it in their local stable currency as quickly as possible. And we could do that. We can do that with Trustable almost now.
And then
that is the biggest problem that people, I think, still forget with crypto in a way, is that the real world still lives in the old world. The vast majority of the world still lives in the old world. And Starbucks can accept in the US, I think, BTC for some of their coffee now, but they've still got real costs in dollars.
Yep.
So that's where the bridge is always coming up, is that people will accept crypto, but it's kind of annoying because they've got to go through some process to get their local currency back. But actually, with Trustable, we can also offer them that, and we can offer them an instant settlement back to the local currency through, fiat. But we need a facility to do that, and that's what Trustable is it enables that back end of us to be able to do that.
Exactly.
And that also then empowers the use of Nano further down the line, because we can offer more people traditional on-ramp and off-ramp, which is retailers accepting it and still wanting to pay costs in fiat. Fiat's never going to go away, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's not.
So this enables a really good bridge between the two worlds, in my mind.
Well,
I may have got it wrong, but that's kind of the way I see it.
We're going to find out.
Exactly. And so, I mean, obviously the commodities side, and that's something that I'm incredibly excited for, the commodities exchange. Ben, can you run us through just a little bit around our plans? Well, I know that obviously we are slightly restricted with what we can say, but it's all about still fixing a real world problem. And would you mind running us through just a few of your thoughts on the commodities side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So the earliest conversations around the power of this technology were certainly focused on crypto as a medium of exchange, but they were also focused around the idea of tokenization. Yeah. And that came to be known as an NFT. That's just what's stuck for the minute, and maybe that's a radioactive term for a lot of people now. I don't know how you feel one way or the other. But the idea is still strong, and this concept of being able to take a representation of something and making it unique and trading it directly is still super powerful.
Yeah.
The other mechanisms to do that are mostly Ethereum-based. There's some interesting outside of Ethereum use cases. Maybe Colin wants to talk on some of those. But fundamentally, they all fall apart, in my mind, for the same reason, which is that they're rent-seeking. They ultimately all rely upon some sort of gas payment, which adds massive friction and never really works. So there have been multiple attempts in multiple countries by multiple projects, and nobody has really done it right.
Yeah.
The first truly novel use case. Should I let this truck pass?
Yeah, I think just let him go.
I can just yell.
We've got a cleaner truck behind us while we're...
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate that. The first use case to combine all of the right ingredients is Trustable.
Yeah.
Built on the back of Nano. That actually provides the ability to move a lot of value, intrasecond, without gas. And so if you apply that to a commodities conversation, you really start to see the unbelievable power of this tech stack in more tangible use cases, sort of outside of our traditional crypto world.
Yeah.
Of use cases that are meaningful to us, but aren't necessarily translating yet.
When it comes to those public, more monolithically built blockchains, how does Trustable differ?
Yeah, so this goes back again to what I was talking about earlier and how we use that identifier inside of the network messages in order to identify the asset that's being traded in the network. But what that actually means is what we're doing is kind of the inverse of what people do with platforms like Ethereum or something. In those platforms, you have the base layer, which is the technology, and then everyone builds their assets on top of it. And that's problematic for a number of reasons: gas fees, complexity. You're tied into a specific platform. The way that we're doing it is asset level separation of each of these individual things. So each individual asset is a separate network. They can be completely isolated from each other. That means they don't interact with each other. And that gives a lot of advantages. So the main advantage is that all of these other networks, which, if you're trading a particular currency pair or maybe like a lesser known currency pair, it's not going to take away from, Nano's bandwidth and the resources that are in the Nano network. And actually what we found when we were talking with some people that are interested in issuing assets is that they actually have a requirement that those assets are in a specific region. And they won't allow as a matter of their own rules those computers to be in other jurisdictions. You cannot do that at all with public blockchains like this. So this is something that they can actually use, put in a spot, and give that geographic lock that they want, and everything's isolated.
You've very nicely led me into my next question around CBDCs, and I know that we did kind of hint previously around Trustable being potentially used as, and we feel, a very good option to be the tech stack behind a lot of the CBDC research and the movements moving forward. Now, I think Colin and I are very clear on our line on CBDCs is that they are not the answer to anything of what we're trying to do. However, they are moving forward and they are going to come, and we might as well have Nano and Trustable being the back end rather than a Ripple or a Stellar or one of our competitors. We feel that if we could get our technology to be used in a CBDC, then we've got a greater chance to actually change the global economy to what we're trying to do with Nano.
Yeah, because then they'll know the nanotechnology. They know the API. They know the software that's running inside of it. It gets them one step closer. I guess an axiom that I always kind of think about when I'm trying to invent new things is you never try to change more than one thing for a person. You don't try to change two things at once. You change one thing at a time because it's much easier for people to ingest. So with this research that these guys are doing, if they look at Nano, they're changing one thing. They're going from the current banking system to this digital software version. And then if they ever want to go to a free floating currency, which I think is very, very is the way that we want to go, then they're just one step away. All they have to do is point all of their existing software, same API, same everything, to the Nano network, and it's on.
And I think that's quite key as well, is that certainly with all the partners that we're talking to on the Trustable side, is one of our almost number one requirements is, because it's the same code base, that they also push Nano into the system as well. So Nano will be accessible in the same systems that Trustable is working with. And specifically when that comes to commodities sides of things, there's one very interesting partner we're working with there that's got 8 million customers. 12.5 million customers in Africa, and the Nano stack will be available to them on their wallet, and that wallet is on their phones. They're already out there, so that's going to be quite a big move this year as well. And so I think that's kind of the quite clear thing here, is that these two things coexist and work together to make better for both. Right? It's not two separate things and two separate projects. This helps this, and this helps this.
And that said, exactly. I mean, not only does Trustable and our partners, when properly, fully launched and up and running, validate obviously the work and the tech stack and all the work that's gone into Nano, on a financial side as well, and on a resource side, it allows us as a commercial business as Trustable to start feeding resourcing back into Nano and pushing that code base even further, which is incredibly exciting, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at the largest open source software projects, I love open source software. It always helps to have a commercial interest that is using it and generating revenue, because then there's a perpetual reason for it to be maintained. So that's why we always work with businesses, and this is going to be another one of the cases where we can get eyes and effort onto the technology we use.
I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to hand over to the audience. If you guys have any questions for us that we can answer for you. But I mean, to everyone, to all of you guys, who do you think our main competitors are with Trustable?
There isn't one.
I tend to agree. I look at this space every day. No one is doing this right.
Well, I think we reversed it out quite a lot, because we were looking for a solution to try and solve some of the problems in the back end of what we were building for Nano, and we couldn't find it. There was always some Achilles heel that we're going to have to deal with. And this takes me back to actually when I first started trading, was 2003, 2004. We tried to buy some off-the-shelf stuff, and we bolted it together and found it was really a piece of shit. So. Because there was always an Achilles heel in it that we had to deal with. You were always bending, to make it work. So we ended up building our own, and our software is now 17 years old and still working well. But that's kind of where we were with this, was we needed some solutions to some problems in the back end of what we were building longer term for Nano, and we couldn't find anything that would really solve it in a simple way. Which is when we were like, let's go and have a chat with George and Colin and see if we can solve this together, because it might be a little bit easier and probably will be a massive use to Nano. So.
Nano itself is C++ right now, but there's actually who's here today porting it to Rust. So there we go.
Gustav.
Yes. So right now it's C++, and then it's moving to be also available in that language, and that's what we program on. But it is a native blockchain, so it's not built on anything else. There's two parts to being decentralized. One is what we want for Nano, which means the power is separated between all the people. No single entity can take control of it. With when things are on deposit for backed items, that's not as important. However, you still need the redundancy in the system. You still want the sub-second settlement time on it. So while you you might be able to reinvent everything by using a centralized database. Everything already exists in Nano as it is. All we have to do is change one number in it. So you'd be rewriting essentially the same thing.
I think actually one of it really comes from, and we did discuss this quite length actually, is the traditional finance world is interconnected as well with SWIFT, which is obviously the main messaging system between everybody. So I think 10,000 participants or something like that are on SWIFT. One benefit that we do have is that the high frequency world and the more forward-thinking banks are now starting to move to blockchain and are integrated with people like Fireblocks and Copper, etc., which are essentially, for want of a better word, custodians. And our feeling was that trying to get the institutions that we're dealing with, specifically on, at the minute, FX and settlement side, are already integrated with Fireblocks and Copper. And getting Nano/Trustable integrated to those entities would open us up to their clients that are already on the network. They could receive those assets into their existing wallet infrastructure that was there. Where if we were getting them to integrate into our own custom system / database, ledger, whatever, would be an absolute nightmare. And I've done that for years with one of our trading companies, and I can tell you it's a headache. And that's us integrating with people like HSBC and JP Morgan, which I think actually one of our longest was almost 18 months of integration just to get a messaging into their system. So in a way, it kind of solved, I guess, a few different angles, but one was like, it's a short level of integration because Nano's been around for a long time. It's been tried and tested. We know there's a few issues that we're helping to solve as well. And then outside of that, that is a big benefit to the people that we're dealing with. They take comfort in the fact that it's a very public blockchain at the minute and is secure, for want of a better word, at the minute. Okay, we've got some spam issues we need to deal with, but that can be dealt with. And moving that actually into a more private blockchain, they get even more comfort out of. But really, the delimiter was the integration time, because if everybody needs to integrate our custom system, it would take forever. But there is a big move in the institutional world of people integrating with the likes of Fireblocks, BitGo, etc. And okay, we're going to have to integrate with them too. But once we're integrated with them, it opens up our sphere of connectivity to all of their existing clients.
So the actual back end of the networks will be closed, so they're not publicly accessible on that. But then as far as the actual usage in the wallet sense.
Yeah, so on the FX and commodities side, as it is purely institutional, it is private and it is closed. Obviously, on the wallet side, our dream is to have this being a retail facing and not to be purely institutional. Nano will always remain Nano. Nano is really, what our goal is a people's currency. What we're trying to create now is the other backbones of a global economy to sit alongside Nano that will also benefit in the ease.
I think that's one of the key things is the integrations we've got with the commodities exchanges, etc.
Yep.
They're all going to list a Nano pair against the commodity. So you'll be able to trade Nano gold, Nano rice, Nano whatever. Okay, you'll be able to do it against dollars and sterling and euros as well, but it's just opening up more and more people to be able to take Nano as a traditional currency in their own wallet as opposed to dollars or euros or whatever.
And that's a really good point, especially as Nano as a free floating currency, to be able to use it as a standard, moving forward. And this really is kind of the first step to creating that standard. To be able to price things in Nano, especially on the commodity side, is a game changer. And it really will cement Nano as a real world currency with Trustable as the back ends, the backbone and the asset settlement layers behind it. I think it's also worth mentioning that the FX network has and will have interoperability with the commodities exchange as well, which is something that is quite, hasn't really been done before to the extent that we are doing it, so that you can trade your commodities and your currencies while having interoperability between the two of them, which is pretty nuts.
It allows Nano to shine.
That's
right?
very true.
So if we're convinced that Nano is better for various reasons, there's now the ability for Nano to show that to a lot more people.
Exactly.
And so it's broadly opening up the use case of Nano and then juxtaposing it against all of these other mediums of exchange and different forms of value in the commodity space.
Yeah. I think that's very well said. I think all of you know that we do things a little bit differently at the Nano Foundation compared to the rest of the space, and we work quietly, incredibly hard, and then when we are ready, release something that we really feel will fix a real world issue. This is what we're doing with Trustable.
I think, we occasionally get asked those things like, why have a nano gold price? No one's going to use it. It's like, well, if it doesn't exist, then of course no one's going to use it. But if you put it out there and people start using it, then you got to start somewhere. And actually, with what we're doing on the Trustable side, it costs us nothing to put the nano pair in there as well. So it's almost a bit of free PR, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's everything. So what Trustable does, not only is it providing the new access points, a commercial wallet where you'll never have to go to Binance, a third party ever again, which is just, I'm so excited about. But not only pushes resources, funding, validation, trust, everything we've been looking for with Nano, really. So this is our way of exactly as Ben said, really highlighting Nano as a currency is through the medium of Trustable.
And I think as well, like maybe a slightly awkward subject, but the dev fund is not exactly huge, which, we were thinking about ways of how do we try and solve this going forward. And actually, I think this is a very good way to solve it in that, Trustable is a pretty simple revenue base and how it generates revenue, because obviously the network is free. So it runs pretty much like Nano. People say to us, how are you ever going to make any money? It's like, well, we probably won't as Trustable, apart from the listing fee.
Listing fee and nodes.
And the listing fee and the nodes will be pushed straight back into development.
Yep.
We will make our money elsewhere, as what we do in Nano at the minute. We make money by market making or by trading or, on-ramps, off-ramps, etc. And it will be the same with Trustable, is the actual entity itself will not make any money from the network. It will make it from essentially doing other things.
Yeah, and I think you've probably kind of said something that may have been lost as feeless FX 24/7, 365 days of the year, which is something that has never been heard of before.
We have a solution for dealing with it that I can't talk about at the minute.
That's what I thought the answer would be.
It's incredibly exciting, though.
But I'm actually very interested you brought it up, because it's been one of our main bugbears about how to deal with, because I've been in the payments business for a very long time as well. And that is one of the big issues that we come up with, and even more so when it's crypto related, and especially more so when you're dealing in jurisdictions such as Africa, which is a real problem. We have a solution. I'm not sure if we're going to run with it. Let's put it that way. So watch the space.
It's going to be an experiment. But Josh, on that...
if you've got any ideas, then I'd love to have a chat.
I've got quite a few. We can chat afterwards.
We'll chat.
Well, I'll introduce you afterwards. But really, I mean, you talk about the crypto space and the crypto audience. Now, I think this may have been slightly missed, is that we have been saying we want to remove ourselves from the crypto space for a long time. We don't believe that Nano really deserves to be tarred by the same brush as a lot of the crypto space, as a non-ICO, not-for-profit, completely feeless, sustainable, everything that the crypto space is known as. Now, the way that we're removing ourselves is through Trustable, because the fact is, with this commercial wallet, Nano then truly becomes digital cash. It is not a cryptocurrency. It doesn't need to be anything else. It is a way to send money around and then convert it back into your local currencies if you want. You will never, as I'm just going to hammer in, you will never have to go on Binance to crypto.com to any other crypto exchange or service or payment provider again. It will just be, hey, here's an app that you can send money around the world in 0.2 seconds fearlessly and off-ramp into 100 plus fiat currencies, all within one app.
No, so we will rely on the standard custodians for that. Take an example, someone like Euronext on the commodities side would be an example of who we would have. They would come and issue on the network. So we're essentially just a technology provider to list and run the network. We could be the issuer, but we don't want to be.
Rice.
Yeah. Rice is one of the biggest ones, actually. rice from Africa.
No one's doing it.
No one's doing it.
Okay.
Why?
We've been asked to do it specifically for rice, so
There's a very interesting company called the Rice Exchange out of Singapore,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's been a lot of interest in kind of, I think, a lot of the natural commodities that are being, that the resource comes from, as Africa or anywhere else. So it is all around kind of what we're focusing on is still emerging economies. It's still being able to empower emerging economies by just allowing further trade. But rice, cobalt, copper, gold, silver, we can have any asset on Trustable, which is incredibly exciting.
It's kind of a commodity problem and an FX problem at the same time. So we have some exposure to some shipping companies, so you'll know that with commodities.
I was just about to bring that up.
Yeah, when you move commodities around the world, they're sat in a warehouse at the port, ready to be shipped. Generally, they get loaded onto the boat, and it's called FOB, so the freight on board. Once the freight's on board, you then got to pay for it. Then the ship can leave. If that payment doesn't turn up before the close of play on the day in whatever banking region you're in, that ship's got to stay there till the next day.
And that costs how much?
That costs a lot of money, depending on the size of the ship, whether it's a small little tanker or whether it's Cape size or whatever, then that can cost a lot of cash every day. And not only that then screws up the port operations because another boat can't come in to load. So, there's specifically more an FX problem in commodity settlement in terms of how you load and unload boats.
And speed to finality, really.
Yeah, exactly. So if I could settle my FX payment for my wheat that I've just loaded at Rotterdam or what have you, and I could settle it in 0.2 of a second, everyone would be fantastically over the moon.
It massively changes supply chain. This has been one of the biggest topics with the global regulatory community of what's the impact on supply chain with distributed ledger systems.
Yep.
And again, no one has really cracked that yet because there's friction built into the solutions themselves. All of a sudden, what looked like a game changer is really replicating a traditional system and maybe not even doing as good a job as the traditional system.
Yep.
So,
and even more so, I think,
the field is open.
With COVID, the supply chain issues that we have seen and the effects that we are still seeing today and are going to get a lot worse as we move through this recession, which no one's admitting that we're in, or depression, I think we are now in.
Since the networks are isolated, it doesn't particularly matter what the numbers are. If we do need some sort of registry or just place that people place it, I envision it doing something like IP or port registration, where somebody picks the number. There's a lot of numbers. Just pick one that no one uses, and it'll become commonplace. But like I said again, since these are private networks, no one will see those numbers anyway. So part of the work that I did with Trustable to prototype this part, I am going to be upstreaming into Nano. So what we're going to see is a componentization of that number. So in the same way that we modify that number, anyone's going to be able to modify that number. Yeah, the consensus will be done differently for that exact reason. So it'll more be like an even weight between all the node participants in the network. So it's purely redundancy type of thing. And since the people that have access to the network will be controlled, then we don't have a Sybil problem like we have to solve with Nano.
It doesn't use the weight the same as.
Yeah, it doesn't use the rep
weight.
weight. That notion isn't there because it's not a decentralized network. It's a distributed network.
Proof of rice.
Yeah, proof of rice, like new technology here today.